Good morning, everybody. Thank you very, very much for joining us. Really, really excited to get our webinar series kicked off again. Today's topic is diversity and inclusion within cybersecurity. We are joined by a familiar face, someone we're very happy to have back and very grateful to see again, Meredith Patton, who is formerly of Protection Group International, where she was a director for cyber operations, now working at Sopra Steria as the workforce inclusion manager. So welcome, Meredith. And if you could start by please telling us a little bit about your role at Sopra Steria.
Good day, Burhan. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me back. Yeah, I left PGI late 2021, and this year I joined Sopra Steria, which is sometimes even people in Sopra Steria say it's the biggest company that nobody's ever heard of. It's a French company. It provides IT solutions, service solutions to a lot of government and private sector clients in the UK. I work within the aerospace and defense section of Sopra Steria, and they basically created a new role, which is looking at specifically at diversity in the workforce. Aerospace within Sopra Steria in particular historically hasn't had a tremendously diverse workforce, and but the head of aerospace and defense, Sue Ellen Wright, is very committed to changing that. So she's hired me to have a look at it and see what we might be able to do about it.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for that introduction. So what is the current state of play on diversity within cybersecurity?
Well, that's kind of a difficult question to answer. I always was a bit of a data nut, but since joining this role, I've been even more of a data nut. And the problem is the data on diversity in general in the UK is still a bit patchy. So I don't know if anyone attended the last one of these I did, but I cited at the time the very good Decrypting Diversity report for 2020 produced by the National Cybersecurity Centre in KPMG. Here's this, on the left you have sort of stats from the updated most recent iteration of that. The problem with this report, as the report itself acknowledges, is that it's got a very small sample size. I think this year they only had like fewer than 1,000 people responding to the survey. So it's not necessarily a representative sample size of the United Kingdom. However, for what it's worth, it paints a reasonably good picture of diversity within cybersecurity. For example, 85% of respondents being white, that's about on a par with UK society. 35% female, obviously not so great. And the rest of the stats down below, as you can see. However, on the right, you can see some data that I've sourced for UK technical jobs, diversity in that, which is even harder to find. There's a lot of variation. This particular source is the Tech Nation report for a few years back, and it's looking specifically at people working in technology-related positions. So you can see that immediately the stats change a bit. And my point is that I think for cybersecurity, cyber is quite a broad church. If you sort of divided it up into the types of roles within cybersecurity, I suspect you'd see some big variations in diversity data for that. And if you pop onto the next slide, this is yet another report from using DCMS data, the UK Cybersecurity Council. Again, it's showing quite a lot of variation in sort of diversity categories. So for the top one, for example, the proportion of women in cybersecurity roles, you can say it's 15%. You could say it's 31%. That's the NCSC report I used last time. So to sum up, the data isn't great. We could do with better data on diversity, and we'll only get that with time and with sort of more effort put into collecting that data.
Okay. So I guess the question I'm sure a lot of people have in their mind is, what is the actual benefit to a workforce that is diverse within cyber?
Well, if you pop onto the next slide, I've got a few examples. Why does diversity matter? These are all sort of examples of where diversity may have been a factor in stuff going wrong. One of the most famous examples is up on the top left. Amazon created some artificial intelligence, a tool to sort of sift CVs. It proved extremely diligent at sifting out women from the pool. And down below that, just sort of moving in anti-clockwise direction, Joy Blumini, she's a MIT researcher, and she did a really famous study on, well, I wish it was famous. I wish it was more famous than it is. She was looking at artificial intelligence facial recognition systems. And when she was actually researching it, she found that she could only get the machine to recognize her if she put a white mask on. And that sort of made her think something's wrong here. And she subsequently revealed a really high error rate. To sort of underline this, this is technology that's actually in use in the UK for facial recognition at the moment. So it could result in really bad things, like people being misidentified for stuff they haven't done, for example. And she's actually produced a film called Coded Bias. Unfortunately, it's only available on Netflix, so I haven't actually seen it myself, but it looks, based on the shorts and the stuff I've read about it, it looks like it's a much longer look at that particular issue. Down at the bottom, Riot Games got sued for gender discrimination by 2 of its employees back in 2018. They settled late last year for $100 million. So lack of diversity can also cost your company a lot of money. Then up on the right, you've got Anne-Marie Imafidon, Dr. Imafidon. She has recently written a book called Choose and Control. It's fantastic. Everybody should read this book. And she's got a particularly interesting example. I went to her talk at the Cheltenham Literary Festival, and she was saying that and it's in the book, a very famous fitness device manufacturer brought out an app on its fitness device that allowed women to track their periods, which is great, except it allowed them to track them for 10 days, which is, if you're a woman, you'd understand why that's kind of doesn't make any sense. So her point was, she was really wondering, did they have anyone on that design committee that sort of spotted, this isn't going to work for a lot of women, or for no women really, because nobody's got a cycle of 10 days. And then finally up the top, again, people might remember that report. It's more an opinion piece than an analysis piece, but it does reveal some interesting data about how really homogenous the CIA was at the time of the 9/11 attacks. And the theory is that because you had a whole lot of people who think exactly the same way, who come from similar backgrounds, there was a lack of diversity in thinking around problems for all of these examples. So you can go on, but basically, if you have a team that's really, really homogenous, then it stands to reason that team is going to be quite limited in its way of thinking, in its innovation, in its reaction to challenges. And that's Dr. Imafidon's point in her book. Again, I would really like to put a plug for the book in here, because I read it and it's just really opened my eyes up both to some of the issues that are ongoing in terms of diversity in tech today, but also it's got a very positive message about what we can do about this.
Okay. So I think the burning question I have at the minute is, what's stopping these companies, employers, to actually do better in diversity hiring?
Yeah, that's something I'm still struggling with, actually, keeping in mind I'm only like 5 months into this role. But what I've found to date, and this is just based on engaging with my own senior leadership team and with people generally in my organization about diversity, I think there's a lot of good intent there. People do care about this issue and they want to do better. I think a lot of them are kind of stuck in what I call a can't because mindset, and they genuinely feel that there are external factors, external constraints on them that prevent them from doing better in relation to cybersecurity hiring or tech hiring, or any sort of hiring in particular. And up on the screen there, you've got just some. When I first joined, I went around talking to people about what they wanted to do, what they thought was the problem. And these are some of the sort of recurring themes that I got back from people I spoke to across the organization.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about all of these statements is there's actually a grain of truth in them. If you take the top one, for example, there aren't any candidates, is what it's saying. And yeah, okay, there's still a minority of women, for example, graduating from science and technology related roles. However, I think about 30,000 of them graduated last year. So there are some out there.
Mm-hmm.
My point with all of these things is to sort of take that statement and gently deconstruct it. So just quickly working through these, we advertise and they just don't apply. That's a really common one. And it sort of prompts me to ask people, wary looking for them. If you're advertising in, say, white middle-aged male weekly, guess what? That's the sort of response you're going to get. So often you have to go and advertise in places that know where to find these people. When I was working for PGI, I advertised on a site called Women's Tech Hub Bristol. Did deliver me one of the best candidates I've ever found, and I'll get to that in a minute. I'm honestly not biased. I just want to hire the best person for the job. The merit-based thing, yes, absolutely, we all do. But again, if you're working within a homogenous team, then your definition of good, what good looks like, what absolutely perfect for this job looks like, might be a little bit limited. So all I'm saying is that at the moment, if you're fishing in a pool that's that big, if you look a bit wider, you might find yourself fishing for talent in a pool that's that big. It's patronizing, discriminatory to offer diversity of candidates a job just because of a protected characteristic. Absolutely. That's not what diversity and inclusion hiring is about. It's about widening that talent pool and finding all the great people are out there, not just a subsection of them. We can't afford to alienate our existing workforce. I hear that a lot. Again, yeah, when, say, you're a white male person in a company, and it must sometimes, and some of the guys I've talked to at my work say, like, it feels like every second statement you hear is about diversity, this, inclusion, that, diversity, not me, not people who look like me. So there's two parts to the answer to this. One is kind of like, it needs a bit of imagination to think about what it's like for people who have worked for years in a company where there's nobody else who looks like them. I've got a tiny insight into this. I was the only woman on the board at my last but one job with DXC Technology for quite some time. So yeah, that's true. But the thing I always say to them and to the SLT is that by any measure of good, those people will continue to be the majority workforce. Just look at the population of the UK. So not only are they still the majority of the workforce, they're also really, really critical to achieving an inclusive workforce, because if they don't engage, if they're not supportive, then it's just not going to work. So they're really, really important to the whole thing. And then finally, my people just don't have the bandwidth. They see diversity and inclusion as a bit of an extra chore on top of everything else they've got to do. It doesn't have to be like that. It's mostly about, and this is something I've said a lot in my current role, it's mostly about looking at what we're already doing and seeing how we could improve that or change or tweak it slightly to become better.
Okay. So you mentioned in brief some of the things that you've done just before sort of going into these problems. What else are you doing at the moment at Sopra to change to change the status quo, to change the issues around diversity hiring?
Very early days yet. We're still in the sort of strategy planning phase, but we've all agreed that something needs to be done. That's a great start. Because I'm working with a lot of senior people, a boss of mine many years ago said that everybody likes what he calls a good senior officer fascination device. So I made this little triangles to sort of summarize what I think is important in terms of focus. And this is something you'll read a lot. This is by no means original, but if you're trying to change the numbers in your workforce to make it look diverse, then obviously recruitment is a big aspect of it. You've got to go and find diverse people and recruit them. The problem is a lot of companies tend to stop at that. And that's where it can really fall down, because if you don't look at how inclusive your workforce is, what sort of an environment they've got, what are their promotion prospects? Are there people in senior roles who look like them? If you don't address that aspect of it, then they're probably not going to stick around. And that can have a huge impact on the third arm of that triangle, which is reputation, which is what you want for a diverse workforce. Is you want to be able to recruit great people, hang on to them, and then they become an advocate for your organization. And to do that, and then it becomes a sort of great, self-reinforcing triangle, if you like, or circle. What's really important to that is the stuff I've put in the middle, and without which it will almost certainly fail. And that is senior ownership, because at the end of the day, people in organizations are really busy. They've got a lot on, and they will pay attention to what the people above them prioritize. So senior behaviors are going to evidence what matters to an organization. So if your senior people are out there saying, this matters to me, I want the data, I want you to report on it, then people are going to pay attention. That brings me to the second point, which is measurable activity. whatever you do, if you don't get data on it, if you can't measure it, you can't control it. And that's a direct quote from my husband, who's an engineer. He tells that to me all the time. And he's absolutely right. Yeah. So you have to be able to sort of define what good looks like, work out how you're going to get there, and then measure the heck out of whatever you're doing to achieve that, so that you can tell whether it's having an effect or not. And then the last sort of aspect within that triangle is the engagement angle. Quoting another person I used to know a long time ago, he used to say, communicate till you're sick, and then communicate some more. And that's what I keep telling my SLT, is that they have to be consistent in their messaging about this, because you can say something once and a few people will hear it. You have to say it quite a few times before everybody starts to hear it, and also think, oh, they're saying that a lot, it must be important to them. And then on the right there, you've just got sort of a split out of those 3 R's. And some of the questions you might want to ask around them when you're trying to address them. These are all the things I'm working on at the moment with Sopra. So, for example, our job descriptions. We're looking at our job descriptions and thinking, would I apply for that if I were somebody with 60% of the qualifications as opposed to 100% of the qualifications? Does it meet my work-life balance requirements? I'm a working mum with kids. Are they going to take me on part-time? And that's what I mean about, are we looking for unicorns? A lot of the time I see a job description and it's got this amazing list of qualifications. You've got to have all of these abilities, you've got to have all of this experience. And then if you really sort of challenge people gently and say, do they really need that? They'll go, oh, well, actually, we could take this shaped person and train them up pretty quickly. So Sopra actually it's designing, and it's going to launch a course called Recruit for Potential, where we look at precisely that issue, sort of how do we attract people who are almost all of what we need, because all of this is about, it's quite practical. It's about addressing a real need, a business need for more people, because we're not going to recruit the people we need with the practices we're currently employing.
That's right. Okay, great. So I've got all sorts of things running through my mind at the moment that I think I'll ask sort of in the questions portion of this. But one thing I think is important to maybe ask you, and by the way, before I do that, I think I'll be very interested to maybe pick up with you on another webinar in a few months' time to see how your journey is coming along, because you say you're at the strategy part of this. Yeah. So it's good to really share and understand with everybody who's following our series of webinars, to see how it is you actually get on with this, what your challenges are and how you've overcome them, and what successes and sort of learning points you have for us as well, if you wouldn't mind. So that's my invitation to the next one for you. But what advice would you give to people on the other side of the fence, the applicants themselves, who might come from the sort of more diverse areas we want to attract them from? So your non-stereotypical candidates, so to speak.
Yeah, we covered this a while ago in the last one I did for you, where I sort of it's easy to give people advice, things like be confident, believe in yourself, go for it. I know from experience it's not that easy. So I think I'll track back to that employer I found on Tech Hub Bristol. So we were advertising a fairly, for PGI at the time, we were advertising a fairly bog standard administration role, like business administration, coordinate the projects, hunt down people who are doing our cybersecurity training courses and make sure they were ready to go, that sort of thing. And we advertised, and I said we should try on Tech Hub Bristol, because I did at least want to try and address gender balance within the team. And Tech Hub, Women's Tech Hub Bristol specializes in women looking for tech-related roles. So this lady applied through Tech Hub Bristol. She came actually highly recommended, and she was a French teacher, and she's applying for a business admin role in a cybersecurity company. And I was really curious, and I said, "Why do you want the job?" And she said, "This just blew me away." She said, "I want to be a penetration tester, and I figure the best way of doing that is to take a job, any job, with a cybersecurity company." And I was just so impressed that I basically went to my boss and said, "We have to hire this person. I want to hire an experimental position where she does 40% rev gen. If you run a business, you'll know that people need to be like 80 or 90% rev gen most of the time. I want to make her 40% rev gen, and she spends the rest of the time technical training. And we did, and it worked. It worked really well, and she was terrific. There's a moral to the story, though, which is that she left us because she wasn't satisfied with the pace or the degree of technical training she was getting. So I failed her. My team failed her on that bottom rung of the triangle, the arm of the triangle, the inclusion retention aspect. So for people applying, I'd say definitely be innovative and curious. If you want to get into cybersecurity, for example, do what my colleague did. Apply for a role with a cybersecurity company, any role, like a business admin role, a project management role. Cybersecurity is about a lot of different things, not just technology. If you've got good communication skills, good liaison skills, good people management skills, you're probably going to find something. People will snap you up if you keep applying. Look around on the internet. I thoroughly support. There's a lot of Twitter threads I follow where there's a perennial complaint that cybersecurity companies do the unicorn thing an awful lot. They want people with hundreds of qualifications, degrees in cybersecurity, when actually what they probably really need is people who are curious and quick to learn, particularly at entry level. Because let's face it, cybersecurity as a discipline is relatively recent. It's only in the last few years, really, that I've seen degrees in cybersecurity at university, for example, whereas we've had degrees in physics or degrees in computer science for years. So, yeah, I think for people applying, it's just keep trying and keep looking. And the thing is, there is a massive skills shortage. So the cybersecurity companies really can't afford to be that picky they can't hold out for the unicorns, not if they want to be competitive. The people are going to be driven to start taking more innovative and diverse ways of hiring people into cybersecurity because there just isn't the skills pool in the current setup for them.
Sure. So I guess we've got to keep preaching that gospel, to keep encouraging people to be innovative and apply and be really, really brave. So I think the other question, the same question, but what I find is a lot of people who are in cybersecurity now are experienced from a different technical discipline. It may have been network security that got into cloud and infrastructure, and that now moved into cybersecurity, or they've come from some kind of a software background and they've moved into maybe penetration testing, application security, and that's sort of the way they have seen. I've seen people go that way. Do you have any advice for experienced people wanting to sort of move into cybersecurity?
Yeah, if you've got good technical skills in sort of a related area, I wouldn't think you'd find a problem. For technical people, it's probably worth investing in some training if you can afford it. For example, one of the certifications in penetration testing, which just gets you to, I think Tiger Scheme used to run them. Cyber Scheme certainly does, just basic training in penetration testing. There's a remarkable amount of free stuff on the internet that toots on YouTube that you can use. There are people running increasingly competitive training packages like Pentester Academy, which is a subscription service. You subscribe up to there are other companies available. Obviously, I'm not necessarily endorsing these. They're just ones I know of and used to use when I was in this particular role. You can subscribe to these companies and they'll give you unlimited access to their little training courses. So yeah, that for technical people, definitely worth getting something specific under your belt. But again, just try, I would, because somebody who understands compute networks, how they fit together, is in a great place to understand what needs to be done to protect them.
100%, yeah. I also very much agree with the point that you made on employers looking for a unicorn. So shamelessly going to plug Zinc now as a consultative recruiter. Many job specs that we look at when working with an employer are essentially an ultimate wish list. They're asking for absolutely everything on there. It is a unicorn. And some of the questions I like to ask is, for example, when it comes to number of years of experience or particular certifications or qualifications, is what can somebody not do with 3 years of experience that someone can do with 5 years of experience?
Yeah,
You know, do
exactly.
you really need that as a hard and fast qualification or criteria to see this person for an interview? And you'll be, it's no surprise to me, it's every day for me, this, but it's unbelievable how many people actually then think about it and say, well, actually, yeah, you know, we can look at people with less number of years experience and maybe not the level of language skill we're looking for, and so on and so forth, to go from soft skills and you know, hard technical skills as well. How much they can flex that, which opens up the pool and the range of people that they're looking for. I mean, one of the things that we always struggle with is finding people with a particular language skill, and that would be in continental Europe, Germany, in fact, asking for a high level of German speaking. And when you question them on that soft skill, is it actually necessary? And question why they have that as a requirement, it becomes apparent they don't actually always need it. I'd say it's probably a 50-50. And what that does is open up the talent pool by literally hundreds of really, really good candidates. So I feel as though if we could sort of preach this gospel to employers before they put a job spec together, it would make everyone's life a hell of a lot easier. I'm probably doing myself out of some recruitment business here by saying you could do that yourself before you need to reach out to a recruiter because you can't find people. Because we're going to come to the same conclusion. You know, what is actually necessary, and what is you know, a preference skill, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. The language thing, yeah. I mean, I have to say I'm probably biased because I'm fundamentally humanities grad, but I would actually say that any day of the week I would take somebody with middle of the range technical skills and those great, I hate the term soft skills, by the way, because it kind of downgrades it for me, but engagement skills, I like to say. So people who have that ability to talk to people, engage them, talk to the client, enthuse the client about what you're delivering. That sort of stuff is gold dust, and the technical skills, as you say, come with time, with doing. And this is something I used to discuss with the technical guys who worked for me quite an awful lot. Most of whom were quite on board with it, really. And of course, the consultants who were doing the sales end of the business in cyber were always sort of wishing that we could find people who didn't just go in there and do the technical job, that they spotted the opportunity to expand with the client and say, oh, you like that? Well, we can also do this, you know. And so those skills are really, really important. Somebody with good soft skills can pick up the technical knowledge quite quickly.
So we're talking about thinking outside the box, the acumen, and you know, the smarts to, you know, look at other opportunities as well when speaking to clients. Okay. So I've got some really good takeaways from here. So I'm definitely going to watch Coded Bias. I am a Netflix subscriber. So that's something.
Like. I wish I could get hold of it. I really want to watch it.
Yeah. I'll let you know what it's like. I'll post a review for you. And then there was the book Choosing Control as well. Sorry,
She's in Control. Could you do me a favor and just possibly pop back to about slide 3? I think we missed a slide in there, and it's quite an important one to me.
Yeah.
Sorry, no, for this one. Yeah. So this is quite a good summary slide. It's almost good as if I should have put it as the closing slide. This is a quote from Professor Dr. Sue Black. She's up at Durham University. She left school at 16 and had 3 kids before she was 20, I think. And she basically reinvented herself as a software developer. And now she runs an organization called Tech Up Women that does precisely that. It takes women and trains them up in technical skills so that they can have a career. And it does it in a flexible way so they can do it from home. Sopra actually Steria, the company that preceded Sopra, bought up a company that did precisely that, run by Dame Steve Shirley, who was in exactly the same boat, looked at women at home and thinking, how can they have a career? Anyway, what Sue's saying on that quote there, and this is from a podcast I listened to recently, the diversity podcasts also are very worth listening to, by the way, but she's making the point that I always make to my SLT, which is that I think one of the reasons we don't get as much traction on diversity at the senior leadership level is because people feel it's a good thing. They want to do it. It's a good thing. They don't necessarily understand the degree of business good it could bring to them. And I think that's what I tend to focus on, which is the talent thing. You're going to expand your talent base. You'll have more people to recruit from. You'll have people with different ideas to recruit from. It is a business good to do diversity in your company. And don't take my word for it. There's a number of studies. I think McKinsey's done one. Deloitte's had a look at it. BAE's had a look at it that show, analyzing hard data that show that companies with diverse teams, they tend to be more innovative. They tend to be more resilient to change and to challenge, like the pandemic. And above all, they tend to be nicer places to work, so that the people who work for them tend to stick around longer. And as any employer listening to this today will know, that's absolutely something you want, is for people to stay around in your organization. So yeah, that's it really. In terms of, by the way, in terms of Anne-Marie Maffedon's book, I've got a copy here. It's called She's in Control. And I went to her talk at Cheltenham Literary Festival, blew me away, bought the book, read the book. It's really, really worthwhile. Got some difficult stories in there about racism in technology. At the talk, she talked about what she calls the talented jerks, which I thought was really funny, but I know what she means, which is people who think that it has to be special, it has to be sort of secret and special and really difficult to get into. And she's saying that tech isn't like that, that we can all engage with tech, however non-technical we think we are, and use it to empower ourselves.
Okay, great. So what I think we'll do is probably send a list of some of these resources you've quoted as well for Tag Scheme, Cyber Scheme, Pentester Academy. I know you're not endorsing them or anything like that, but I think to share that with any of the viewers, people who signed up who've not made it today, including the book and a recommendation for Coded Biases tonight's viewing. We'll get that across in an email with the recording as well for anybody who's missed any of those points. And yeah, I mean, it's been great to have you again. Really, really good to see you. Very excited for the next set of webinars that we're going to be releasing the topics on very soon. And we'd love to keep in touch with you, Meredith, on how things are going. So we could probably catch up and get a date in the diary to see how you're doing in a few months' time.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, love to.
So I don't think there's any other questions that have come through in the comments for me.
Sure.
But I will bid you farewell. Thank you again very, very much for your time. Thank you for everybody who attended, and we'll get the recording out to you all in due course.
Brilliant.
Brilliant. Have a great day. Thank you, Meredith.
Thanks very much, Burhan. Great to see you. Thanks, everybody.